All right, so picture this. You're prepping for this big meeting about e-commerce, and you need to get up to speed on Shopify fast. You've come to the right place. We are going deep into their Q3 2024 earnings call. And trust me, it's more interesting than it sounds.
Yeah, what I love about these calls is we get to hear straight from the execs and from the analysts just grilling them with questions. It's like a backstage pass to the thinking of a company, really at the cutting edge of e-commerce.
Okay, so let's break this down. First, the big numbers. Shopify's gross merchandise volume, or GMV. That's the total value of all the sales going through their platform. It grew a pretty solid 24% year over year. That's actually their fifth quarter in a row, over 20% growth. So talk about momentum.
It really shows how they're firing on all cylinders right now. And revenue followed suit, up by 26%. And this makes it 6 straight quarters where they've grown more than 25%. Really an impressive run.
So they're definitely on a roll. But growth, just for the sake of growth, isn't the whole picture, is it? What about the bottom line? Are they actually making any money?
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Their operating income more than doubled compared to last year. And their free cash flow margin, that's the cash they're generating after all their operating costs, that expanded to a really healthy 19%.
So they're growing and becoming more profitable. That's kind of like the holy grail for any company. But how are they managing to do this? What are the specific things driving this success?
So a couple of things. They're seeing really good growth from their plus merchants. Those are the bigger companies using Shopify. And they obviously bring in more revenue. And as Harley Finkelstein, Shopify's president, put it, Shopify is increasingly the go-to platform of choice, not just for entrepreneurship, but for all of commerce.
Okay, that's a pretty big statement. It sounds like they're aiming to be the platform for every kind of commerce out there, not just small businesses.
Yeah, exactly. They are going after those larger companies. And it's a big part of how they plan to grow. Geographically, international sales are doing really well, especially in Europe. Finkelstein even mentioned that countries like the Netherlands are exceeding expectations, which is kind of surprising given how the economy is doing over there in Europe.
Yeah, that does make you wonder. How much of this growth is really from Shopify's own efforts versus just the broader trends we're seeing in retail?
Oh, the analysts were definitely pushing the execs on that. One even asked about how Shopify is handling the increasing consolidation we're seeing in the e-commerce market,
Yeah.
with fewer and fewer platforms really dominating the space.
Right, so if these big marketplaces keep growing, where does that leave Shopify?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Finkelstein's response was really interesting, though. He really emphasized how these big brands and retailers, they're looking for something that can unify all their commerce operations. Online, offline, social media, you name it, all in one place.
So are they trying to become like a one-stop shop solution? The central nervous system for a business's entire commerce operation?
That seems to be where they're headed. They talked a lot about their enterprise product, Shopify Plus, and also their commerce components, which are becoming more and more popular. And those let businesses kind of pick and choose which Shopify features they want and integrate them with their current systems.
That's pretty smart. Gives those bigger companies some flexibility, since they might not want to totally ditch everything they already have. But what about the impact on the smaller merchants? You know, the ones who Shopify was really built for originally.
The analysts brought that up too, especially when it came to the Shop app. That's their consumer-facing shopping app. They wanted to know how Shopify was going to keep things balanced, meet the needs of both those small businesses and the big players, all within that same ecosystem.
It's a tough balancing act for sure. So how did Shopify respond to those concerns?
Finkelstein was pretty firm that the Shop app, it's meant to benefit all their merchants, big or small. He highlighted some of the new features, like the merchant-focused home feed, which uses machine learning to make the shopping experience more personalized and helps buyers find new brands. He also said they're already seeing some good results from those changes.
Okay, so they're really trying to build up this whole ecosystem within the Shop app, make it more than just a place to buy stuff. But let's be real for a second. The competition in e-commerce is fierce. The analysts must have really grilled Shopify on how they plan to stay ahead of the game, especially with things like the U.S. election and AI shaking things up.
Oh, they definitely did. When it came to the election, there were questions about the trade situation with China and the possibility of new tariffs. A lot of the merchandise sold online comes from China.
It's a valid concern for sure.
Absolutely. And while Shopify admitted you can never really predict what any administration's going to do, they stress that they're committed to giving merchants the tools to navigate any kind of political or economic changes that come up. They even brought up their response to the COVID-19 pandemic, where they had to come up with solutions really quickly to help those businesses that were suddenly forced to move online.
That's a fair point. They do have a history of being able to adapt to unexpected challenges. But what about AI's impact on search? That's a whole different animal, right? How's Shopify making sure their merchants can still be found in this rapidly changing environment?
Finkelstein acknowledged that AI is totally transforming product discovery, and their focus is on making sure Shopify merchants stay visible across all platforms, new search engines, social media channels, you name it. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
So they're hedging their bets. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But speaking of bets, the analysts must have been pretty curious about Shopify's free cash flow margin, that 19% we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Did they ask what Shopify might do with all that cash?
Oh, yeah, definitely. They wanted to know if Shopify was planning to really ramp up marketing or maybe explore some other strategic opportunities. Basically, where are they planning to put their resources?
So is it more of a let's double down on growth situation, or are they going to focus on building a stronger foundation?
Jeff Hoffmeister, Shopify's CFO, gave some insight into their thinking. He said, "We have gone from negative 3% free cash flow margin in 2022 to 13% last year, to being on track to deliver high teens for full year 2024.
Wow, that's a pretty amazing turnaround in just a couple of years.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and it gives them the flexibility to invest in future growth without having to worry about sacrificing profitability. Hoffmeister stressed that they're happy with their current margin. It seems to be striking a good balance between those two priorities.
That makes sense. They can't just sit back and relax, even with strong profits. But analysts always want to know what's next. What other kinds of strategic partnerships or initiatives were they asking about?
One that got their attention was the expanded partnership with PayPal. This is more than just letting people pay with PayPal. It's about integrating it more tightly into the whole Shopify ecosystem. The analysts wanted to know how that might affect Shopify's financials and their overall platform strategy.
It's a pretty big move. So how did Shopify explain why they're doing this and what it might mean down the road?
Both Finkelstein and Hoffmeister emphasized the value of giving merchants more choices and making things smoother for them. By bringing PayPal into the fold, so to speak, merchants can handle all their transactions, including the ones through PayPal, right there within Shopify.
So simplifying things for the merchants. That seems to be a recurring theme with Shopify. But did they get into the financial details at all? Any specifics on how this might impact their numbers?
Hoffmeister did mention that the integration might change how they recognize revenue, particularly for PayPal wallet transactions. They'll be moving from net to gross revenue recognition, which could actually boost their top line a little bit.
Interesting. So even a seemingly small change like that can have a ripple effect on their financials. Speaking of changes, the analysts also wanted a clearer picture of Shopify's plans for the Shop app. They were curious about some of the recent updates they've made and how those are influencing consumer behavior and repeat usage.
It's all about keeping people engaged and coming back for more. Finkelstein reiterated their focus on building a merchant-centric platform, one that empowers businesses to connect with customers in a meaningful way. He talked about using AI and personalization to improve the shopping experience and encourage people to make repeat purchases. He also mentioned seeing some encouraging results with things like the new home feed, which is boosting both engagement and brand discovery.
Okay, so they're building out this whole ecosystem within the Shop app, trying to make it more than just another shopping app. But they're not just thinking about today. The analysts must have been digging for some insights into Shopify's long-term vision.
One analyst went really big picture, asked if Shopify might expand beyond commerce altogether and try to replace some of those existing systems businesses use, like ERP, CRM, or even supply chain management.
Wow, now that's thinking big. Did they give any hints about wanting to become this all-encompassing software solution?
Well, they acknowledged how intertwined all those systems are. But Finkelstein stayed focused on commerce as their main mission. He emphasized how good Shopify is at integrating with those existing ERP and CRM systems to make things run smoothly for their merchants. They don't want to try and build everything from scratch.
Sounds like a smart move. Better to be really good at one thing than kind of mediocre at a bunch of things, so they're doubling down on commerce. But they also get how important it is to work well with those other essential business tools.
Exactly. It's a practical approach, lets them leverage the strengths of others while staying focused on what they do best.
So they're laser-focused on commerce, but they're keeping an eye on the bigger picture. With all this growth and ambition, it seems like they're walking a bit of a tightrope. They need to meet the needs of small businesses and big corporations, adapt to all this new technology, and navigate a pretty complex competitive landscape. It really makes you wonder, can they really pull it all off? Can they really be this platform for everyone, from like the solo entrepreneur to the huge companies?
It is the question, isn't it? And for me, it really comes down to balance. Can they meet the needs of those giant companies without forgetting about the small businesses who got them there in the first place?
It is a tough balancing act. And then there's the whole regulatory landscape. Data privacy is a huge deal these days. And, they're getting pretty big. Antitrust scrutiny is always a possibility.
Yeah, those are definitely things to keep an eye on. And it all feeds into this question of whether Shopify can really be the central nervous system for all of commerce. Like they seem to be saying,
So let's play a game here. Imagine you're an analyst on their next earnings call. What's the one question you would ask Shopify? The one that keeps you up at night?
ooh, that's a good one. I think I'd have to press them on their long-term vision for the Shop app. They talk about it being this merchant-centric platform. But how does that actually translate into sustainable growth and engagement? How do they keep it from just becoming another shopping app that gets lost in the crowd?
It's a great question. The app world is so competitive. You really have to offer something special to stand out.
Yeah.
You really do. And that wraps up our deep dive into Shopify for today. We covered a lot of ground, their impressive numbers, the strategic challenges they're facing. Lots to ponder as we head into next quarter.
Yeah, definitely a lot to keep an eye on.
And for everyone listening, we always love hearing your thoughts. So hit us up on social media. Let us know what stood out to you from this earnings call. What questions are you left with about Shopify's future? Until next time.
Happy commerce singing